The destroyer functioned as bait in a way, forcing the human fleet to overextend. It lured the largest, most ferocious Terran battleships into its vicinity and kept them out with a larger fray. While our big guns battered the Doomsday ship with laser fire and missiles, they were easy targets for the enemy to pick off. If those guys couldn't breach the destroyer's shields, none of our ships could. I decided our best play was to cover them and buy them a bit more time. I noticed the enemy surging around one particular human battleship, a Titan-class behemoth. It appeared to have sustained heavy damage, but was still limping towards the planet killer. Perhaps they were planning a bombing run at point-blank range. Whatever the case, our foes clearly didn't want it to reach its destination, or else they wouldn't have diverted 15 craft to attack a single ship. I glanced at the sensor data from our computer and did a double take. The energy readings from that Terran battleship were off the charts. The warp drive seemed to be destabilizing. My first thought was that an enemy shot had hit the reactor, but the computer detected only minor damage to that compartment. Rather, it appeared the humans had shut off the cooling system, as though they were trying to cause a quantum meltdown on purpose. What are they doing? Their reactor is going to go critical, I hissed. Carl checked his own display, then chuckled.
Son of a gun. They're going to use the ship as a bomb.
That is suicide.
No, that's sacrifice. There's a difference. Why don't we give those guys a hand?
I readied the kinetic weapons without further comment. This was hardly the time to muse about human courage. We swooped into the fray, lighting the enemy up from their blind side. A few of the ships snapped their attention to us, giving our allies a slight reprieve. Their first instinct was likely to pick us off with plasma rounds, but Carl had pulled us in dangerously close to their position. Any shots fired at us would risk hitting their own ships, not that it would make a difference. Our opponents had precision weapons and would target us without batting an eye. As two antimatter missiles locked onto us, I prepared myself for the final flash, and hoped that we had done enough. In our ship's weakened state, there would be no evasive maneuvers.
Deploy the last mini-missiles, BM.
Carl backed. My fingers obeyed before my brain processed his request. If their original purpose was as interceptors, perhaps they could stop the inbound projectiles. I watched with bated breath as the tiny warheads arced through space, planting themselves in the path of the missiles. The antimatter blast was set off before reaching us, but I knew we wouldn't be so lucky next time. Our vessel peeled back before they could target lock us again, circling for another pass. I could feel the ship shuddering each time we turned. In her current condition, we were pushing the limits of her capabilities. The warning lights panel looked like abstract art, with more colourful indicators blinking to life every second. Most of the enemy craft had turned their focus back to the suicidal battleship. It was easy enough for them to brush off any Terran skirmishers that came to their allies' aid. However, one of their fighters had tracked our movement and veered off from the pack. It was zipping towards us at full speed, plasma weapons primed for the kill. I lined it up in our sights, resigned to another shootout. At this point, it was more about taking as many of them with us rather than surviving. My resignation morphed into pure terror as I saw a predatory traced smile on Carl's face. Humans usually had that expression right before they did something insane.
Let's play a little game of chicken, shall we?
He growled. A high-pitched yelp escaped my throat as our ship accelerated to full speed, and I was flung back in my seat. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, and I noticed new warnings popping up on the engine column. What exactly was this chicken game the human referred to? I was pretty sure I didn't like it, since it seemed to involve playing with our lives. We swerved right into our adversary's path, putting us moments away from a head-on collision. All coherent thoughts evaporated as the enemy fighter stared us down. Despite our imminent demise, Carl made no attempt to slow down or turn away. My instinct screamed to lunge forward, grab the control column, and steer us out of danger, but I couldn't move. At the last possible second, our opponent deviated from their course. I exhaled a sigh of relief, realizing that I hadn't breathed in much too long. No wonder I was so lightheaded. My entire body was trembling, overwhelmed by the fear chemicals pumping through my veins. Carl, meanwhile, clapped his hands together, grinning from ear to ear.
Cowards! Cheer up, BM. They blinked, not us.
I massaged my temples, groaning. Carl, I'm okay with dying, but we don't have to actively encourage it.
Nonsense. Like we say on Earth, I'd rather go out with a bang there, Whimper. Our friends will run the bastards in 30 seconds tops, so hit him with everything we got.
The route back to the Terran battleship's side was clear after our little stare down. We sawed past its assailants and I unleashed every bit of ammunition we were carrying, even types I knew wouldn't work. None of our hits landed any serious damage, but fortunately help had arrived. Most of the remaining human vessels had joined the suicide mission protecting the battleship at all costs. I saw a few hurl themselves into the line of fire, using their puny skirmishers as shields. Others rammed into enemy ships, pushing them away from the battleship. The humans were unyielding in the face of death, undeterred as their eyes fell around them. When pressed against a wall, their bloodlust bordered on insanity. I drained the last of our ammunition, watching as the battleship crossed the final stretch. It buried its nose in the destroyer's side, and the impact was enough to tip its destabilized reactor over the edge. The meltdown unleashed staggering amounts of energy on the planet kill's insides, and to my amazement, it burst apart at the seams. The once untouchable destroyer fractured into several pieces, which began to crumple in on themselves. Our sensors detected magnetic fluctuations, hinting that their own reactor was cascading out of control. It teetered on the edge of order and destruction for a few tense moments before spilling into chaos. The scraps of the mighty ship fused together in a deformed monstrosity, folding up like a paper ball. Our communications crackled to life, startling me. Whatever had been jamming our transmissions must have been aboard the destroyer. The voice belonged to the same officer who had tried to stop us earlier.
All Terran ships, you are ordered to retreat. Abandon system. I repeat, abandon system. Get word back to Earth at all costs.
I was shocked to hear the word retreat called out over our feed. I hadn't been certain the word even existed in the human lexicon. Carl leaned forward, a frown on his face.
Sir, what about the refugees?
Oh, it's you.
The officer's tone carried a mixture of disdain and disappointment.
You guys bought us some time. We're sending transports out now. Whether we can warp out before we get shot down, I don't know.
The devourers will be on you in seconds. They're everywhere. You need an escort.
We're probably going to die, I'm aware. If you stick around, you will too, pretty boy.
My friend shook his head, clicking off the radio with a frustrated sigh. He glanced back at me, sympathy in his gaze. No doubt he was aware of our lack of ammunition and the damage to our ship. There was nothing more we could achieve. We had done everything we could. Any reasonable being would leave and live to fight another day.
He's right, BM.
Carl finally spoke.
If I thought it would make a difference, I would stay. But with this ship...
I tried to suppress the guilt fogging my mind. It wouldn't be fair to ask Carl to die a pointless death after all, just because I had my son's death on my conscience. But I knew then and there, abandoning my people would haunt me for the rest of my life. But even if the humans won down the road, I would be the sole survivor of an extinct species. Of course, I know. I was surprised how curt my tone was, flat and emotionless. It didn't even sound like my voice. To Earth, then. My friend plugged in the coordinates with haste, as we didn't have a moment to spare. A cluster of enemy ships were nearing our position, surrounding us on all sides. Most of our surviving allies had already jumped away, which made any stragglers easy targets. I hoped our warp drive was still working, because if not, we were about to get dusted. Our surroundings shimmered as we slipped into hyperspace, and the battlefield faded away. My mind drifted to thoughts of vengeance, anger burning in my chest. Someone, or something, needed to pay for what happened today.